News! This is Cassia Herman reporting to you from London. Today, we're experiencing lightning, rain showers, and vampires. Civilians here are currently under utter shock as multiple victims across the city have been reporting missing for short durations of time, only to return pale, weak, and covered in bite marks. Officials fear London is in great danger as a vampire is among us. Let's take it to reporter Michaela.
That's right, Cassia. Police are warning to stay indoors after dark and travel in groups. The attackers seem to target young adults, and witnesses believe it's Count Dracula, a nobleman from Transylvania. Police urge anyone who sees him to report it immediately.
Thanks, Michaela. I'm Mark, reporting live from outside Dracula's castle. Locals refuse to come near this place. They claim he drinks the blood of the living to remain immortal. Whether you believe it or not, something terrifying is happening here. Reports of people entering the castle are never seen again.
Stay with us as we investigate Bram Stoker's Dracula, a story of power, fear, and the darkness that lurks within humanity itself. As London struggles to cope with these terrifying attacks, authorities are relying heavily on the accounts of Bram Stoker, an Irish researcher and a writer who first documented these events. His records provide insight on Count Dracula's habits, his abilities, and the origins of these strange and deadly incidents.
Stoker was born in 1847 in Dublin, and from a young age he was fascinated by the supernatural. Bedridden for long periods due to illnesses as a child, he spent hours reading tales of folklore and legends. Later, as a researcher, he traveled across Eastern Europe collecting eyewitness reports of mysterious illnesses and explained disappearances events similar to what now London is experiencing.
His meticulous notes details the movements of a nobleman from Transylvania, now known as Count Dracula. According to Stoker, Dracula presents extraordinary strength, moves with unusual stealth, and has a peculiar way of preying on the innocent, a pattern we are already seeing here in London.
Thanks, Cassia. The first report included in London involved a young lawyer, Jonathan Harker, who traveled to Transylvania to Count Drac on business. Harker's accounts describe a strange, foreboding castle and an unnerving host who could only appear and vanish at will. Soon after, shipments of soil from Transylvania arrived in England, and shortly thereafter, attacks began appearing across the city. Victims are being discovered pale, weak, and drained of blood. Police believe the Count is specifically targeting young adults and those living alone, living in darkness. Authorities are urging all residents to travel in groups, keep their doors locked, and report any suspicious activity immediately.
It's a frightening pattern, one that Stoker first recorded in his investigations. The Count's arrival in England seemed deliberate, almost calculated. Experts suggest that the combination of fear, superstition, and the unknown makes Dracula an unprecedented threat to Victorian society.
For those just joining us, these events follow a chilling sequence documented by Stoker over a decade ago. The Count's actions blend elements of ancient lore with modern strategy, making him both elusive and dangerous. And while authorities continue their search, the city remains on high alert.
As night falls over London, officials continue their investigations. Citizens are advised to remain vigilant, avoid traveling alone, and assist authorities if they witness suspicious activity. The full scope of Dracula's plan remains unknown, but Stoker's research gives us the best chance of understanding and surviving this crisis.
Stay with us as we continue to follow this story. Up next, our team will bring you first-hand witness accounts and expert analysis on the Victorian voices coming up next, shedding light on what it's like to encounter Count Dracula himself. Welcome back to Victorian Voices, where we read about classic women.
Thank you, Cassia, for having me. It's strange to relive my traumatic experience, but I will do it if I can reveal the prevalence of women through Dracula's cycle.
Let's start with the expectations placed on women in your time. What did it mean to be proper Victorian lady?
Oh, we were gentle and pure and dependent. I mean, come on, who wants to live like this now? Am I right, ladies? As I once said, I suppose that we women are such cowards that we think men will save us from fear. And we marry him. That was the ideal, to be protected, not to protect. Society admired women who were sweet and submissive, never daring or strong. And trust me, they hated my dear friend Mina for that.
Hey Lucy, one critic wrote that she never attempts herself to resist Dracula. She must be rescued, transfused by the men. Do you think that's true of you?
I mean, a critic will always have something to say, won't they? But on a serious note, I can't argue with her logic. She got me. My story isn't one of resistance, but surrender. Not by choice, as most decisions for women at the time were, but surrender and acceptance. I mean, every single part of me depended on men. When Dracula came, I didn't even know how to fight him. And yet, Dracula can't exist without the women who are his victims and his brides. We gave into the cycle of darkness, even as it consumed us, consumed me.
I mean, can we get an applause for observation and awareness? again. In many ways, your character reflects what Demetra Coppola called excessively and solely feminine, while Mina has a man's brain and a woman's heart. Mina is praised for her balance, but you, Lucy, are punished for your softness.
I mean, you couldn't have said it better. I was adored for my pureness. Mina even told me how Van Helsing said she's one of God's women, fashioned by his own hands, to show us men and other women that there's a heaven we can enter. And I knew this man for how long? But when I changed, that same purity was used against me. The sweetness turned into adamancy, heartless cruelty, and the purity of voluptuous wantonness. All said by the same man. He can continue to have such a controlling narrative over me and who I am. I mean, God bless him for saving me, but come on, I'm my own person.
So you're saying transformation into a vampire was viewed as moral corruption rather than suffering? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I became what they feared most, a woman that desired. In their eyes, I was no longer innocent, but a devilish mockery of what Lucy's sweet purity was. The men saw my body as something that needs to be purified and fixed by their hands, of course. As one critic even noted, another important male fantasy in this novel is the violation of a good woman. My death was less about saving me, but more about restoring their control.
Wow, what a way to say it. Some critiques even suggest that women in these stories are not completely innocent. Trittle writes, in folklore, the female often subtly initiates the affair by granting a demon lover access to her bedroom, or by helping him across a blessed threshold. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, I'm just throwing this out there, but maybe it reflects their fear that women might have secret desires and they refuse to acknowledge because they can't control or fulfill them. But when I said, I knew I would if I were free, only I don't want to be free. I mean, that freedom itself frightened me. We were raised to believe that wanting more love, experience, or even knowledge was sinful and feared.
So femininity was both a trap and a performance? How could you even survive that then? You were set up to fail in some aspect.
Yes, a performance that cost me my life. I embodied what they wanted, beauty, sweetness, and obedience, yet I still failed.
I must say, it's interesting that the idea of sin was brought up. Comparing your experience to a biblical reference, maybe it has something to do with your next special on London After Dark coming up next. Lucy, thank you so much for coming. It was an honor speaking with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to give a glimpse of the reality of what a Victorian woman was at the time. I had an amazing time, and make sure to tune in on
London After Dark, coming up next.
Good evening, London. Welcome back to London After Dark. Tonight we're taking a look at the mysterious attacks by Count Dracula and how this supernatural creature could potentially be repealed. We'll be discussing the biblical elements that seem to protect victims from Dracula and exploring why faith serves as protection from the supernatural. Joining us is Dr. Abraham Van Helsing, a doctor and religious believer who has been studying the Count firsthand and will share his insights on these spiritual defenses.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here.
Dr. Van Helsing, so many Londoners are terrified right now. Can you explain why you're the right person to guide us through these times?
Yeah. Through my training as a doctor, it has taught me to rely on logic, observation, and reason. I am also a Roman Catholic and devoted to faith. This combination allows me to understand both the natural and the supernatural. What threatens London now cannot be defeated by reason alone, nor faith. Science helps us to know how to act, and faith shows us where to act. Together, they give us the best chance of defeating Count Dracula.
So you're saying both your scientific knowledge and your religious belief make you qualified to guide London through this crisis?
Exactly. Without science, we act blindly, and without faith, we ignore the spiritual truths at work. It's about finding a balance between the two and using both for our advantage. As we know, Dracula is a creature of pure unholiness. He thrives in darkness, targets the innocent, and his strength is beyond ordinary human force. But as I've learned from my recent studies, Dracula does have some weaknesses that we can use to our own defense.
Tell us more. What are his weaknesses, and how do you know about them?
Most of what I know comes from the studies of Dracula's victims, journals, testimonies, and experiences. For example, during Jonathan Harker's imprisonment, he wrote about the effect of a crucifix on the Count in his diary, saying, "His hand touched the strings of the beads which held the crucifix. It made an instant change in him, for the fear passed so quickly I could hardly believe that it was ever there." Even reading that, I could imagine the fear and surprise Jonathan must have felt. The crucifix is not a symbol that can be ignored. It directly attacks the unholy, and even the slightest contact causes Dracula to submit. This proves my idea that holy objects are real defenses, not just superstition. Another powerful tool we can use to our defense is the Eucharist. When I used the Eucharist to block Lucy's entrance to her tomb, I saw it work as she remained between the lifted crucifix and the sacred closing of her means entry. Once the wafer was removed, she materialized and slipped through the cracks and back to her resting place. The other men's belief is irrelevant to the power of the host, and, as with Harker and his crucifix, they too come to embrace the real presence of the divine in what they had seemed at mere symbolism. It was remarkable that holy objects hold power regardless of the doubts of men. This is the essence of why faith is so crucial. It is not just belief, it is real and is actively defending us against evil. There was also another frightening incident with my colleague Mina. She had been suffering under Dracula's influence, and in desperate effort to protect her, I placed the Eucharist wafer on her forehead. It had seared, it had burned flesh as though it had been a piece of white hot metal. You can imagine the shock it was, as if the very touch of something holy repelled the darkness clinging to her. That searing, burning reaction is the manifestation of that divine power, forcing the unholy to recoil. It's proof that faith is a weapon against the supernatural, that science can't alone replicate. Another weakness I have discovered is Dracula is actually weakened by daylight, as he who is not of nature has yet to obey some of nature's law. He may not enter anywhere at first unless there be some of the household who bid him to come in, though afterwards he can come as he pleases. His power ceases, as does that of all evil things at the coming of day. Even a creature that defies life and death is still bound by God's creation. Sunlight reminds him that he is not of God's order and that he is fundamentally unholy.
Why do these holy symbols like the Eucharist affect him in sunlight so strongly?
That's a great question. I would say it's because in the presence of both good and evil, good will always win. Regarding Dracula, I fear that no weapon wrought alone by man's hand would have any effect on him. Nothing we humans could create would harm him, but faith is a different story. I came to understand that Dracula can only be defeated by what is intricately holy. The crucifix, the Eucharist, and prayer are not just rituals. They carry the power of God. Lucy's experience of overcoming evil shows this, for she is not a grinning devil now, not any more a foul thing for all eternity. No longer she is the devil's undead. She is God's true dead, whose soul's with him. Even those corrupted can be brought back to light when faced with God's presence. If we want to beat Count Dracula, we must use faith and science. Our tool must be in silence in our efforts in secret. For this enlightened age, when men believe not what they see, the doubting of wise men would be his greatest strength. We can even turn his own strengths against him, as we defeat him with his own weapon, for we make it more holy still. It was sanctioned to such use of a man, now we sanctify it to God. Count Dracula cannot face the transubstantiated body of Christ present in the Eucharist. Faith is the ultimate weapon, more powerful than any human creation.
Those are some great points. However, our time is coming to an end. What final advice would you give to the people of London?
I will just say that the reason Count Dracula cannot face holy items like crucifix, the Eucharist, or even daylight is because God's power over all creation surpasses any evil. Even the darkness acts exist within his creation, and he has the authority to overcome them, which I think gives us hope. Dracula's engagement with contemporary religious controversy is too specific in details and implications to be merely coincidental, and shows religious items indicate they're imbued with power beyond symbolic representation. My last words to those listening would be, hold on to your faith, because it is stronger than any evil. Stay safe, London.
Thank you for listening. This was London After Dark. Stay tuned for Midnight Testimonies.
Good evening, London. You're watching Midnight Testimony. Tonight, we bring you something truly extraordinary, an exclusive interview with the one and only Count Dracula. If you didn't know already, Dracula is what's defined as Gothic tradition, a world where science, faith, and fear collide. Count Dracula, thank you for joining us. The people of London strike fear upon hearing your name. Tell us, what makes you so Gothic?
My world is carved from fear itself. I live where reason falters and shadows breathe. Jonathan Harker once wrote, "The castle is on the very edge of a terrible precipice. A stone could fall 1,000 feet without touching anything." That is the essence of Gothic. Isolation, darkness, the unknown pressing close. As scholar David Seed once said, Dracula dramatizes the gradual breakdown of rational explanation before mystery. In my home, logic dies and terror awakens.
So Gothic isn't just about monsters, it's about what happens when people realize they can't explain everything.
Exactly. Fear is born the moment reason falls.
Van Helsing and his team fought you using science, blood transfusion, notes, telegrams. Did they ever stand a chance?
Science is clever but limited. Even Van Helsing admitted, it is the fault of our science that it wants to explain all, and if not explained, then it says there is nothing to explain. The Gothic thrives on that arrogance. Rosemary Jane once wrote that Stokers' tale speaks in two voices, one that urges belief in the supernatural and another that affirms the authority of science. The mortals clung to logic while I moved to the realm of faith and nightmare.
So you're a rebellion against reason.
I am what reason refuses to believe.
Many fear you, but others say your power is seductive. What is it about you that turns innocence into temptation?
Because desire and death share the same breath. You see it in poor Lucy Westerna. The sweetness was turned to adamantine, heartless cruelty, and the purity to voluptuous wantoness. She is what your scholars call the fallen woman. Karadina Ches is wise to say Dracula functions as a manual for managing untrustworthy canines and women, illustrating the dangers posed by prize domesticates. They feared not only me, but what I awakened with their woman. Freedom, hunger, and the will to feel.
So your bite isn't just death, it's rebellion.
Precisely. In the Gothic, passion and horror drink from the same vein.
Still, you weren't only fighting holy men. Mina used typewriters, phonographs, telegrams, technology. Did modern progress frighten you?
No, it amused me. They thought machines could go against and cage the eternal. But as Ruth Halberstein explained, I'm not simply a monster, but a technology of monstrosity. A machine that produces through fear, gender, race, and class. The humans' tools were new, yes, but I was older than their science, older than their gods. Their wires and words cannot stop the ancient pulse that beats beneath the rational world.
So even progress can't save us from Gothic.
Progress is the illusion darkness involves too.
Even after more than a century, your stories still captivate us. Why do you think people can't let go of it?
Because I'm every shadow they tried to bury. As Robert Geary said, my tale derives its lasting appeal from powerful imaginative polarities, love and death, faith and fear. Humans crave what they dread. Even Elizabeth Miller warned that speculation has too often replaced fact in understanding Dracula's origins, because they need their monsters to make a sense of the dark. And when Jonathan saw me, he confessed, I saw the Count's faith, a look of demonic fury, and the strength of 20 men. The strength is not just mine, it's the strength of every fear they carry inside them.
So you're saying the Gothic will never die?
How can it? As long as the heart beats and shadows fall, I will be there, between reason and nightmare, whispering welcome to the dark.
That was Count Dracula, the embodiment of Gothic terror, reminding us what we fear most often lives within us. That's a wrap on Midnight Testimony. Thank you so much for coming, Dracula.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tonight, we've learned that Dracula is much more than a Gothic horror tale. It's a story about power, fear, and the struggle for control in every form it takes.
Through Lucy's transformation, we saw how the novel exposes the limits placed on Victorian women at the time. When Lucy changes, she's condemned, not because she's evil, but because she defines what society expects from her.
Van Helsing reminds us that belief can be just as powerful as reason. In a world where science fails to explain the darkness, faith, ritual, and community becomes the weapons in survival.
And at the heart of Gothic fiction lies the fear of the unknown, the spaces where logic breaks down and imagination takes over. Dracula shows that sometimes what terrifies us most isn't the monster, it's understanding what the monster represents.
To read Dracula today is to see how our world reflects back at us. Power still shifts, gender still defines expectations, and fear still shapes how we react to what we don't understand. This is the end of our broadcast. Use these lenses: power and control, belief versus logic, gender expectations, and fear of the unknown, to question the stories you hear, the systems you live in, and the darkness you face. Because sometimes what hides in the dark isn't gone, it's just waiting to be seen.